Alright guys, just a quick video here before I go to work. One of my rare morning moments. Got Fighting Formations here for you. A game that I've played intermittently, off and on. A game that I have praised and lauded for its originality. The mechanics, the way this thing plays. It's very intriguing. Specifically the Kharkov expansion. Regarding the scenario and play here. And it's been a little while since I visited this game. Again, the order matrix track, very fascinating. The way command and control works on the map itself, which coincides with the order matrix track. All of that's fine and dandy. The one thing that I remember / don't remember, the rule book for this thing. And I mean no insult to Chad at all. It's a bit of a mess. There's a game in here, you just gotta suss it out. It is not logical, to me at least, the way the rules are laid out. There are things in here that you may have a question about. You go to look up and you can't find it. It's not in here, or it takes 15 minutes to find it. That said, is it a bad game? Hell no, it's not a bad game. There are a number of games that have issues along those lines. Does not make it a bad game. This is a great game. And, rulebook aside, there are tons, and I mean tons, of videos on YouTube that show you how to play this, break things down, explain it. And there are a ton of things on Board Game Geek. So I guess if you're willing to do a little bit of extra legwork to go outside of the rulebook, if you have a question, then it's not going to be a problem. And what else? So yeah, again, I love the game. It's a great game. Chad did a wonderful job with this. I've always liked this better than Combat Commander. I've said this over and over and over and over, and I don't understand why this doesn't get the love that Combat Commander does. But what I've started with is, and this is, let's see, from the Kharkov expansion, which some of you may be happy to know, has a bevy of smaller scenarios. Why is that potentially a good thing? Well, because maybe you like smaller scenarios. Maybe you don't have the time for a long scenario. And, a smaller scenario, you can focus a little more on certain things than you can with a larger scenario, especially when you're playing this solitaire, which is what I'm always doing. This is scenario 19, a change of orders. Muchertovka, Ukraine, 7th of January 1944. And we got some 4 Grenadier platoons, an MG-34 platoon, and an MG-42 squad, with some tanks and etc. You're going to yell at me. I've chucked the tanks. I wanted to focus specifically on the infantry, and balance was not interrupted because the firepower for either side was equal. Now, as the Russians, you need to move up and take one of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11. A number of objectives. There's 11 of them. Germans have to hold. And I don't know if you can see this or not, but we've got problems for the Russians already. We've got shaken squads, broken squads, suppressed, or platoons rather, I haven't deployed, which I will. And a whole flurry of broken platoons over here. The Russians, and I guess this is expected. There's not a whole lot of cover. There's quite a bit of ground to move across. But the Germans really cleaned up with their opportunity fire here. And the way that works is, each time the unit moves, hey, a German can fire, as long as he maintains his rate of fire. I did finally expire on rate of fire on these two, but not before. Again, all hell kind of broke loose here and really affected the Russians. So that's that. What else with this? Yeah, a great game. The rule book leaves quite a bit to be desired. I don't understand, again, the layout. It just, somebody dropped the ball on this, and it doesn't mean Chad did. I know GMT does not, that's my understanding, GMT does not finalize, or how do I put this, edit, if you will, and make sure things are tight. It's up to the team, and maybe Chad passed this along to some editors, play testers, and left it up to them, and they dropped the ball. But again, there's rules in here, but some things are missing, and the layout leaves a bit to be desired. What I plan on doing, and this is for those of you that know me, is typical, is take this board here, which goes with the original old school tactical. This is some Russian winter landscape, which I think would coincide nicely with anything, most of these scenarios in this Kharkov expansion, and transpose them to the best of my ability with similar victory conditions depending on scenarios, etc. onto here. So that's to come. And well, yeah, but to back up though, I just remembered something. Like for instance, if you haven't played this before, you're going to play this before, you might be thoroughly confused when you see, for instance, and having played other games, what am I looking for? This. So this MG42, if you played other games, right, you're going to say, hey, I need a squad or a crew to man that. So you look in the rule book to determine if that is in fact the case. There's nowhere in there does it talk about that. And in fact, if you look in the rule book, you're not even going to find a picture of this guy and what the stats mean. There's stats for the armor in there, and I guess you put two and two together and you figure it out. But how hard would it have been to put this guy as an example in there with what the stats mean? I don't get that. And that's just a few of the things. But to go back to the MG42, if you look on the back, you figure out, oh, it has a movement factor on there, which makes me believe that there is an inherent crew attached, because the thing doesn't move itself. So you figure the things out like that. You got to just kind of think and figure some of the stuff out. It's not explained in the rules, some of the stuff. So that's the game. This is Kharkov expansion. Don't get me wrong, fantastic game. And if you guys have been waiting to play this, don't wait any longer. Hell with Combat Commander. This thing's the better game. You just got to slog through the rules a little bit. So that said, the next time you see me, I will have a scenario transposed onto this, and hopefully the Blues will have won the third of a best of seven. And here's my hockey segue. The third of a best of seven Stanley Cup Finals series. We won our first Stanley Cup Finals game in the history of the organization, in Boston, which was the second game in overtime, in dramatic fashion, typical Blues fashion. And the third and fourth games back in St. Louis, game 3 tonight. Big game. We've got a guy suspended. We've got a few people injured, so we'll see how that goes. But I tell you, man, we need 3 more victories to get our first Stanley Cup, and Jesus, that would be bittersweet. All right, y'all. So I'll talk to you next time, and keep gaming.